people who said, no, we don't need it because, purists and all that. Finally, the community decides, and they finally said, okay, result type is a good thing. So now we have result type. So it's an enum, and you get a success or a failure. And the success is anything that you want, and a failure is basically an error message. So it is error. So you can actually kind of enum or subclass the error, the Swift error, and have it your way. And they also have another function called get, which lets you know what is the actual error. Then you have future enum cases. Now, if you worked with enum and Swift, even in the earlier ones, if you had 3 or 4 cases, if you did not handle all of them, it would give you that all cases are not handled. So the easy thing was default and then let everything be handled by default. The problem is, let's say you had A, B, and C, and you put a default for, you handled case A, you handled case B, and you put a default for everything else, and then you add D, E, and F. What happens now? Everything is being handled by default. So if you put unknown default, what it does is it gives you an error saying that it's just a warning, sorry, not an error. It gives you a warning saying that you have not, it's not exhaustive. You've not looked through all the switch cases. So it's a good way of actually looking at it. And even 4.2, if you use unknown, it doesn't give you anything. It just gives you a warning. The other thing they have now with this is flattening. So when you take an optional, so this is a good example. If you take let Q as try harbor boat. So because you're trying optionally, it will give you an optional, right? And then if you actually have another one, which is an optional boat, which actually returns an optional, you get a double optional, which means that if you want to unwrap it, you have to unwrap it twice. So it's a bit complicated, and you go like, why would you do that? Well, that's what it was. So now they've actually fixed it, so that you actually get flattened optionals as a result with try. I'm sure you've all at some point done the fizz buzz if you've gone for an interview. And the way to do it is with the modulus. So instead of using the percentage or finding out if it's a multiple of, there's a new function called isMultiple, and you can actually put in a number. So you can actually see if the number is a multiple of the other integer that you're after. And it's much more readable, it's much more clearer than actually using a percentage sign or anything. So it's just about readability. So Swift is moving not just towards functionality, also towards readable code and nice, cleaner code. Then you have transforming and unwrapping dictionaries. Now, this compact map values. So what it does 2 things for you. One, it does a compact map, which means it removes the nils. And then it also says, leave my directory key value pairs. So if it's removed, but keep them and map it. So here's an example. That's not me. If it was a string, A and B is nil. So when you actually go through compact map, you get A and C. So one more thing, if you actually feel you must try these, Paul Hudson, heard of him? That's Hacking with Swift. And even on the Swift page, swift.org, they recommend trying his playground. So he's got a nice comprehensive document which actually lets you look at the different examples. Strings. Now, raw strings is an amazing thing. And actually, when I was writing this slide, I remember the last presentation I made was on strings. That was when Swift 4-point-something was released. Now, what happens is you can have the 3 quotations and then put your string big block in it. But look at the example. The first one is note /r/n. So what happens is that when you put something like that in a normal string, it would actually break and come to the next line. So looking at the Python side of things where they put a hash, you can actually have, the first one is basically the new model, where if you have the hash at this front, it would not break the characters, and you can have the literal characters in there. So even if you have double slashes, it will show as double slashes. While in the second one with the triple quotes, if you have a /r or /n, which is new line or next line, it will actually break it up. So when you print, it will actually show you broken characters. So if you're using formatting or something, it's quite useful and handy. String interpolation. Now, this is something really, really sweet. So what happens is, I'm sure you have tried, when you try printing an object in a string format, like this is, and then the object with a slash and open brackets, you actually get this is and the name of the object and something. So if it's a class, it'll tell you the underscore underscore LDB something. And if it's a structure, it'll give you all the members of the structure. Now, with this, the best part is you can actually write your own string interpolations. So you can format how you want that particular thing to be. All you need is you need to set this extension and add a function called append interpolation. And if you do that, you're all good. Now, here's an example. So you can use a mutating function. And if you see, yep, this one has a value which is users. That means you can actually overload the function with different parameters, and it'll actually work accordingly. So here we are actually passing a user, and we're saying my name is value.name and value.age. So user is basically a structure or a class which has two members. And in this example, we are sending it a string and an int. So we are actually replicating it. So when you say the song shalala 3 times, it'll actually format it 3 times. So this is really interesting if you want to actually format strings. There's some new character properties. So character as such was kind of useful and similarly useless, because the moment you go to character, you can't do a lot of things. So you have to actually kind of string it to then again make uppercase, lowercase, and whatnot. So now a character actually has a lot of useful properties. You can actually even check, is it a number, is it a symbol, is it a hexa value, or even get the hex value if it's a character which is A to E, or F actually. Yeah, you can even check if it's a whole number or a hex, as I said before. The same thing they've also extended for Unicode scalars. Now, what happens is in the normal English ASCII values, they're characters, but the moment you go into different languages which use more than one character for a language, so it's like if you take the German language, you have the umlaut, which is still 1 because it's ASCII. But the moment you go to Chinese, Hebrew, Arabic, or any of the other languages which are actually Unicode and take a lot more, you don't know if that is one character or is it a string of characters which make that one grapheme or one lexicon. So you can actually do Unicode scalars, and they have their own functions like strings, which is useful because you don't have to translate between strings and characters and Unicode scalars. So you actually have all that functionality through. Removing subsequences. Now, in the past, when you actually took a slice, you would get from a sequence, you would get a subsequence. And the point was that even if you took a portion of a string, you get a substring, and it's kind of frustrating because you have to then again translate it back to a string or whatever. But now, and I don't have an example because I found it flaky, and I'll be honest, I couldn't really work much with it. And I spent about 3 minutes on that, so. So what it does now, it actually gives you an element rather than the substring. So it gives you the sequence rather than a subsequence. So they've removed these subsequences. Dynamic callable. Now if you see, the author is actually Chris Latner, and you know that he's with Google, and he is quite passionate about Python. So with 4.2, we had the dynamic member lookup. Anybody use that? It's a cool thing. So if you have an array and you try to actually, if you have a structure or a class and you try to access a member, you can't because the compiler says, no, you can't because it's not there in there, because that's the whole idea of the static compiler. But with dynamic lookup, you can actually mark that as a dynamic member lookup, and you can have whatever you want. So your class or structure may not have .new, but you can actually say it's dynamic, which means you will provide it somewhere. So to that extent, now you have a new one, which is called, So now you have dynamic callable. So you can actually call a function dynamically, which basically is, again, for interoperating with Python. So all you need to do is you need to have a function called dynamically call. And you can have two options, which is with arguments or with keyword arguments. So with arguments is not named parameters, and with arguments is basically, with keyword arguments is key value pairs. So if you call, for example, C1, it's just with arguments and you have nothing. C1 and 2, it basically passes 1 and 2 as arguments. And if you call C and then A1, which is basically the named arguments, it doesn't work because you have not called it with named arguments. So when you call it with keyword arguments, you can actually use named arguments. So it's quite interesting, but then I have not found, personally, I have not found the interoperability between Python or using it in any other form. So while it is really useful, I don't know, I can't tell much about why and how. Then they've actually changed dictionary literals to key value pairs because they said dictionary literals are not dictionaries, they're not literals. So why call them dictionary literals? So again, reiterating the fact that on the Swift evolution, the community does talk about things, how it is relevant, is it readable? There's a whole lot of discussion on should it be, there was a Boolean thing. It was like, should it be toggle, should it be switch, should it be on, off, or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, you ask for opinions, you'll get a lot of opinions. So finally, they're calling it key value pairs, and which basically is you can define literally a dictionary, but it's not a dictionary because when you look into what type it is, it's still a key value pair. Sorry?
Dictionary is just a dictionary, or what is it?
So dictionary is basically, you have to define, it's a string. In very simple terms, a dictionary is a string any. You can have a dictionary of string and string, but by default, I mean, a dictionary is a string any.
String to string, it's that addition string to string, right?
You can have anything, it's generic.
Should evaluate the type automatically, since you put string to int or string to int?
Yes. But it should be similar, that's all. Yep. Then you have identity key paths. Now, this is the other one from the 3 minutes that I actually spent on trying to look at the things that didn't work. This is the other one. So you have something called self, which is an interesting thing, which kind of didn't make sense in the past. You're like, what is x.self? But you have a new property called self, so you can actually use it in key paths. This example is exactly the one on Swift evolution because I couldn't make the other ones work. So you can actually try this. You assign x the value of 5. You print x.self, it will give you 5. You assign x.self as 3, and you print x, it will still give you. So it's basically .self is the same as the actual value. But make a note, this is lowercase self, because in 5.1, there's an uppercase self, which is, I'll come to that at the end. If you use codable JSON for encoding and decoding, now ranges are yoo-hoo. I don't know where you're going to use them, but yeah, ranges are. So yoo-hoo, good for it. Sorry, Rob?
I've used that one. It's long overdue.
Okay. Now, I have not come across a use case, so I can't talk about that use case. Right. Now, platform dependent. So with the package manager, now Ankit Angarwal is one of the guys who's really passionate about the package manager, and he's done a lot of tickets on there. So one of the things is platform dependent settings. So you can actually have a package, and you can say package, these are the platforms, these are the versions. And if you look at them, they are all enums. So you can't make mistakes. You can when the new version comes out, but yeah. You have target build settings. So just like the settings files in the past, you can have a long, big settings file. So package manager, think of it as one replacement for CocoaPods if you want. Think of it as the Apple or the iOS version of Gradle or Maven, if I can be bold to say that. So now it's actually kind of picking up more. So you can actually have settings. So you want the Swift settings, linker settings, C settings or C++ settings. And you can even have functions like when, and you can have some kind of condition saying that this should happen only when this condition is fulfilled. Dependency mirroring, which is also an interesting one. It's basically using mirrors for your package. So you can have it on an alternate site. One other thing you have now is the less than. So in the past, they only had greater than or equals to. So you would have if not greater than or equal to Swift 4.2, but now you can say if less than Swift 5. So it gives you both ways. I mean, I don't use that as much because, but if you do, then it's really helpful. Now, these are some of the things which are in 5.1, which is still beta. So when they get released, we can talk about it. One of the things is universal self. So if you have a structure or a class, and in your closure or when you're actually accessing it from outside, it's something like dynamic self. So instead of using dynamic self, you can actually use self now. But this one is with the capital S, not a small s. They have ordered collection diffing. So if you have collections, you can actually see what are the differences. So you have two arrays or two sets, you can see the diff. And it will tell you if it is actually to be removed or added. So you actually get a kind of a collection which says these are to be removed, these are to be added. So what is the difference between these two, which is really useful in some cases. And then you have creating uninitialized arrays. So when you create arrays, this one's a bit tricky. I'll leave that.
So you can create array with nils, right?
Yes, you can do that even now. You don't have to.
So now is the problem big?
Yes, they're optional, yes. But the only problem is that when you create uninitialized arrays, you're also setting a size. That's why it's tricky. I have not read a lot into it, so I won't be talking much about it. That's why this is just a point on it. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for your patience and hearing me out. Question time.
You forgot to mention about universal library. As far as I know, Swift 5 has universal library, which comes with the device.
That's the ABI compatibility. So the whole Swift library is actually part of the OS now.
Yeah, now the question.
Yes.
If you have a library inside your app, will it automatically ripped out by installer?
I don't think so.
No.
What is the
API
preference?
stability
Because-
for libraries comes in 5.1.
Currently, you can't get away. The library might be there. There's an option, skip library, only for Objective-C model, not for a Swift model. The Swift model library automatically bundles.
I think you have to recompile it, and there will be some settings which kind of
So you
thins it.
your minimum target must be iOS 12.2 or whatever it is.
In this case, it will be automatic.
No, it'll be 13, I guess, Rob, because that's 13 is where you have the. Sorry, 12. What am I saying? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got to raise your minimum target. If you're still supporting iOS 10, iOS 10 doesn't have Swift 5, so it can't use the ABI stability, so it still needs to bundle all of the built-in libraries. But ABI stability for your own sheet frameworks comes in 5.1.
But isn't the Swift library DLL file? It should be separate. It should be easy to read out.
If you target iOS 12.2 or above,
It's just that if you have backwards compatibility, you need to have the library.
yeah, if you're shipping for iOS 11, iOS 11 doesn't know about the
I actually
Swift
support
libraries.
iOS 9 even.
Yeah.
Yes?
A lot of conversation I see happening around Swift 5 and Swift 5.1, people often talking about the features that didn't happen in Swift 5 and Swift 5.1, namely the dropping of count where as a feature, people often arguing about whether the string library in Swift is sufficient or if there's a lot of work left. Is there anything that you personally would have liked to see in Swift 5 or would like to see in Swift 5.1 from like a day-to-day developer perspective?
Good question. I don't have an answer for you, really. For a simple reason is that I am not using it to the extent that I should be. I'm satisfied at the moment with Swift 4.2. Yes, there are shortcomings, but we are not really kind of pushing it to the edges. So we haven't really reached that stage where like I should have had that. And what happens is over a period of time, you make your own utilities and libraries, so you kind of like have a fix for it. And sometimes they work much better than waiting for something which is, so once it gets formalized, we might use that. So personally, that's my take. Yeah.
Any more questions?
This is kind of the other side of that question. Like, do you think that some things like count where have a kind of a waste of time for the Swift core developers to be thinking about, and they should just leave that to people to add in their own extensions, etc.?
I think count where was deprecated, if memory serves me right. Now the point is,
I think the broader question is, are there some trivial things creeping in, do you think?
I mean, is it a waste of time? I don't know. It's an open source, it's a community thing. So if more people feel that one way, then that's exactly how the community feels, and that's what exactly the thing is. So far Apple had been known as the walled garden. They would never let other people play in that space. But now it's open. So, I mean, there are a lot of things which might not even make sense. There would be other pressing things, but they only take up the ones that people vote and kind of think is important. I mean, half the things, the changes with the syntax might not even be important. But, well, I mean, there's a discussion on it. So is it a waste of time? Well, I'd be diplomatic here and say that's what the community believes.
Any more questions?
Hi. I didn't play with Swift 5 yet, but I was confused about using .self, and I know we can use capital self right now. So .self will give like a type, because capital self it is itself giving a type, isn't it?
Capital self is more referring to the class or the structure, the dynamic type, while the .self is not the type, it is actually the variable itself. And the reason for that is basically for using key paths. So you can use the /.self, which is the key path, which refers to the same variables. You can use them in square brackets, which is like what do you call, I'm missing the word, as a subscript now. What's that thing? No, it's just like how you use dictionaries. So you can actually use the square brackets and you can have a path in it. So key path, and then you pass the key path.
Swift equivalent for key value coding is the key paths. They had a gap there that is you couldn't reference the object itself in a key path. And that fixed it.
So it's the value of that object rather than the object.
Any more? I think it's good to note down the Swift evolution numbers, because there will be a very long discussion thread in the forums about each of those if you want any background on how they reached the decision.
Okay. Then thank you. If there are no more questions.
We'll just get recoordinated and we'll back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
The dynamic callable stuff would be and quite useful in an analytics API.
Okay.
So if you had, well, I mean, there's lots of ways you can make it useful. But one I can think of is like if you were reporting to say temperature or something, you could create a very simple API on some analytics service, and then you can report an event, and you can just add any old arguments you wanted to in the call side, and it would just be wrapped up, and you can then wrap that up in a dictionary or something and shove that off the Omniture. Rather than
parameters, and then you can just kind of call it.
because normally most APIs like that, you would have some report events, and then may have an email or something with an event name, and then you have like parameters which would be a dictionary.
You said Dr. Swift and
Don't need to stand up there until. These are the standard mics that we use for all our videos, so I'm familiar with them. It's not picking up the, well, when I talk, there's
shoot before.
It seems really hot there. There's no audio in the, oh, there we go. Stay away from that speaker. There's no audio in the presentation. Okay, I am unmuted now, so we're all set. All right, hi everybody. I am Adam Weiss. I am the founder and CEO of App Demo Videos. We've actually been making videos for technologies of all sorts, a lot of mobile apps and all through the spectrum up to enterprise for 10 years now. So I want to talk about what you need to think about if you're thinking about making video for a tech product. That's really what we focus on, and I want to give you tips, ideas, some case studies, and then answer whatever questions you have. The technical details of how to make a video itself kind of really depend on the specific video you're making, so feel free to ask me about that, but this is more about the various types of videos you might make, why you'd want to do them, and some tips about how to do that and where. So we are one of the top producers of tech videos, specifically mobile app videos, but all sorts. As I said, we've been doing it for 10 years, have done videos for everybody from indie developers with an idea, which some of you may be, up to some of the biggest companies in the world. We've done work for Oracle, Netflix, Microsoft, AT&T in the US, Telefonica, all sorts of places, and we've done, am I shifting out of the, I'll stay over here. I tend to wander. Anyway, we do work for companies of all sorts, of all sizes, and try to tell their story, whatever their size and whatever their topic. So we're just getting started here in Australia and trying to introduce ourselves to the community. I'm always happy to help people. If you just have questions about video, have questions about these things, just get in touch with me. I am on the Slack, and I'll put my contact info up at the end. But when I say video, what everybody probably initially thinks is YouTube, right? You think, okay, well, where do you go to watch video? You watch a lot of video on YouTube. But I want to talk about the power of video in ways that more than just YouTube and some of the other places you may think of. And the first one I want to talk about is actually doing video on Google. Google, because they own YouTube, preferences video over other content. There's a huge SEO advantage to making video about your product in some ways that are kind of unexpected. So to give an example of this, let's run a Google search for a semi-popular, still popular app these days. So let's do something, check out Fortnite app, see what happens. So when you search for Fortnite on Google, you get interesting results. The first two make a lot of sense. They're the direct link downloads to the App Store and to Google Play. Then you get the official Fortnite Epic Games website, and then you get videos. And those videos are user-generated. Those are not videos that Epic has put out because Epic doesn't have a lot of official video content around Fortnite. So this is a little bit of a pitfall if you're Epic because you don't know what the content of those videos are. If you have a product and somebody likes it enough to share it on YouTube, which is a really common thing to do these days, their video could end up here right at the top of the search results instead of whatever content you'd like to contribute. And that video could be poorly made, could be critical, could be just long and rambling. It could reflect negatively upon your product. So a big reason to think about making a video of any sort that is decent and official is to claim these spots on Google before anything else. So if somebody searches for your app or for what you do, having this, because Google owns YouTube, is a really valuable tool when it comes to SEO. So that spot there can move up and down. I'm sure you all experience this. You search for something on Google, and sometimes it's at the very top, sometimes it's a few results down, never at the bottom of the page. Always video on top because Google makes money when people watch YouTube videos, so they promote their own content, basically. But YouTube, of course, is a major place that people go to look for videos. It's actually the second largest search engine in the world after Google, so the two together are just a tremendous behemoth when it comes to where people look for things. So let's do another video search on YouTube. This time we'll search for one of our clients, the iOS mobile app Goodreader. It's a PDF reader that's been around for a number of years, and see what it's like if the presentation, you know what? This is misbehaving. So let's see if I can get this to behave properly. We'll go to this slide, or we'll just skip this part. Let's see. Okay, search for Google. Even not live demos sometimes don't go well, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So search for Goodreader, and at the very top here, you get an official video, which is something we made for them. We've actually updated this video since, so this is a little bit of an old capture. But interesting things to focus on here are the fact that that official video actually has the smallest number of views out of those three that I've highlighted, but it comes up first because Google actually tracks connections between websites, between like Google My Business accounts, between other things, so that it will pull the official content up to the top. So even if you make a video and somebody has made user-generated content, you can claim a higher rank in some cases because they know that it's yours. So that's an advantage if you're thinking, oh, well, somebody has done something. What do I do to try to overtake that spot? You get an official unfair advantage from Google by putting out your own content. Let's do another example, this time for an app that isn't one of our clients. The boxes are misbehaving, but anyway, search for the popular iOS to-do app, Todoist. Now, Todoist doesn't have an official video, or at least doesn't have an official video that gets much attention at all. So what you get instead is you get this Introduction to Todoist, tutorial for beginners. Look at the length, 6 minutes and 8 seconds. A beginner video that's 6 minutes and 8 seconds is not something that gives you confidence that this app is really easy to use, right? If you're saying, I want to get started with this, here's a 6, 7, 8-minute video. Here are 167 videos in a series called Working with Todoist. These are all unofficial content because it is a popular app. But again, it doesn't give the best impression of the ease of use. This is actually, I mean, people use Todoist. It's pretty an easy use tool. But it doesn't seem that way from the search results. And here, my 2018 Todoist setup, 15 minutes and 30 seconds. People don't like long videos of this sort, especially when they're trying to learn about a product. So if you have a nice, concise, short video that can teach you about that product, then that'll give a lot more information. So to compare these pieces here, the Goodreader videos versus a couple Todoist videos, that Goodreader video is, if I can get back, the Goodreader video is a lot shorter. It's under 2 minutes, and it gives a much more clean, crisp impression. So even having any type of video that's well done doesn't have to be totally professionally produced. It just needs to be well thought out, organized, and concise. That can make a huge difference in the way people perceive your product even before they've had a chance to go to the App Store listing, download it, try it. So some of the main marketing advantages of video that are related to what I just said are that you get to take control of search results, both on Google and YouTube, and in some instances, and I can talk about this if you want, in the app stores themselves, because you get preference in the app stores if you have videos in your app store listing. I've heard that from both major app stores. It gives you a professional, curated first impression of your product to the potential users, and that can lead to better reviews because if people self-select saying, this is a product I want to try, they will be happier with it once they download it. If they don't know enough about your product when it comes time to make that purchase or free download decision, they're more likely to leave a negative review. But if they have a very clear idea of what your product does and doesn't do, then the people who don't want the product won't try it. And then you won't get 1 star saying, you know, this won't mow my lawn. You know, that's not what it's for. And it can all result in more users, in more customers, and more revenue if you do all these things. So the pieces that people tend to think of, major video sources, Google, YouTube, putting it on your website, there are a lot of other places that video can be really advantageous as well. So obviously the website video, the landing page video is something really powerful. The explainer video, if you want to call it that, where people come to the website, they get the brief overview of what your product is in, say, somewhere between 45 and 90 seconds, and they come away with a much better understanding of what your offering is. But App Store videos are incredibly popular and incredibly powerful these days. As I said, I've heard directly from someone high level at Google Play and indirectly through a major client from someone high in the Apple App Store that they are far more likely to feature a video in the App Store if it has a video in the, feature an app in the App Store if it has a video in the App Store listing. So you can obviously, embed app previews in the App Store on iOS, up to 3 videos at this point. You can embed even more videos on the Google Play Store. And if you do that, you get preferential treatment through the actual app review process when it comes to what gets featured, what gets put in our lists, those kind of things. Even customer support is a big video advantage. If you have a lot of users and people are constantly asking you certain questions, making videos to answer those questions it's a digestible format. People don't necessarily want to read a bunch of text, but they will watch a short video about how to do something. That'll actually potentially improve your review scores as well, because if they can go and answer their question without asking you, then they leave happy, and those people are generally more able to use your product and therefore more likely to become a product evangelist if they're really somebody that is enjoying it. Bloggers, news, they love video because, no offense to any bloggers, but fundamentally the way blogging works these days is you kind of have to be lazy in a sense. You can't write 16 pages of content about something. You can't even write 4 or 5 paragraphs these days because they just want clicks and they want somebody to sit on the page for a certain amount of time so that they get their 7 cents from somebody watching or listening to this particular feature. And if you give them a video, that solves their problem. All they have to do is write a few sentences and put your video in, and then people will sit there on the page for long enough for them to get their money, and they'll learn what you want them to learn about your product because you've provided that video. We've made a lot of videos that go out there to the press, and they're just used directly, right at the top of a blog post, right at the top of a news article, because someone will just click it and use that as their content. Another big, important place that video can be used, obviously, social media, both directly through posting on Facebook and through social media advertising. We don't make a lot of ads ourselves, but I can give you some information about that at the end. And a couple of places where people really don't think of, trying to get investors. Video is really powerful for investor pitches. Now, I'm not saying you should make a video of your investor pitch and put it out there, but using video in an investor pitch to augment the information you're giving can be really powerful. It can replace live demos so that they go smoothly every single time, and it can really give that polished feel rather than this kind of haphazard, I'm going to switch inputs and do this other thing. I can just show exactly how the product works and know that every time I click the button, as long as the slides behave, it'll work pretty well. And then finally, if you're trying to use video as a presentation, say in webinars or to include in presentations in various ways, video can be really powerful that way. We've made some webinar replacement videos for major clients to cut down on the costs of doing webinars over and over again. So, as an example, again, if I'm doing a presentation and I want to do a YouTube search, all I have to do is click this button, and this is going along on its own. It looks, if I wanted to, I could pretend. I could be over here touching things. It would look like I'm actually using YouTube to search for things, but I'm not. And you can even take that a step further with mobile and make it look really, really good. And that means that there's no stress in the live demo portion of whatever your product is. You can just put it on the screen, it'll work every time, and then you can go on. So, video is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful, and this is one of my favorite quotes we've gotten as feedback from one of our clients. Andy Blacker, the CEO of Rednote, said, "As far as our business has come, that video is still the best thing we did. It was the best investment we ever made." We made an investor pitch video for them that went into their package that was going out to try to get funding they actually ended up getting funding, coming back to us about a year later to make a video of the finished app, which was a little bit different than the concept. And then that has actually become quite popular. They've gotten buy-in from all the major music labels out there, and they're actually able to use major music label content in their app at either low cost or no cost because they're sharing some of the revenue. And that wouldn't have happened without having that video. So it can be really, really powerful. So people ask a lot, what is the ROI of video? And that can be easy and hard to answer depending on the particular situation. When you talk about using video as advertising on Facebook directly as ads, through Google ads or YouTube pre-roll ads, or on Twitter, you can often measure that directly. If you put a video out there and you can see how many clicks you've paid for, how many of those clicks convert, that ROI is something that you have to kind of calculate on your own, but you can see that. And there is evidence out there that the ROI can be very, very high for the right type of video. But other types of video, the ROI can be a little less clear, so even though it can be pretty direct. And for example, we did a webinar replacement video for Oracle where they were paying 5 sales engineers to do this talk multiple times a week, every week, to try to pitch to potential clients. So they're paying 5 people for 45 minutes simultaneously playing roles of kind of talking about how this product would work. Now, 2 problems there. Paying 5 people for an hour gets expensive when you're talking about high-level sales engineers for this thing. And these people were acting roles. They're not actors, they're sales engineers. So they weren't doing a great job at it, but they were being asked to do this and it was quite expensive. So we actually took that webinar, went through the whole process of kind of just cleaning it up a little bit, used all the same slides and information, but hired 5 actors to tell the story that was basically the same but rewritten. Suddenly, they just go and they hit play. They have 1 person there to answer live chat questions and handle questions at the end, and they get the same consistent message all the time. So that's an instant ROI, probably, because after a few weeks of paying these people to do a presentation, then you've recouped the cost just by turning it into a video. And at the same time, we made a webinar replacement video for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise a couple years ago where there was someone, they were literally flying around the world to give this talk. And now they've replaced that mostly. She only does the talk to the high-level people. Now what you do is you go to their website, you click something, and you get this HPE webinar that goes through, and we've actually cleaned it up a little bit, made it look even nicer, and people can watch this anytime. She was dealing with getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning in California to give presentations via the web to Australia and Japan, and they were able to really streamline that by creating it as a video. So the ROI sometimes can be directly measured when it comes to advertising, sometimes is very obvious when it comes to these kind of things, and sometimes can be a little bit more of an indirect situation. But some of the questions around ROI were asked in a survey last year, marketers and consumers. And this was what was said. This was posted on the HubSpot blog, I think, about 10 months ago. They may have updated it at this point. I just saw in the last couple of days that there's some new numbers. But these are numbers from about 10 months ago. When they asked marketers, 97% of them said that video has helped increase their users' understanding of the product or service. 97% say that this is really helpful from a marketing point of view. 76% said it's increased sales, and 80% said that video has increased dwell time on your website. And dwell time is a major SEO component. When you're talking about how long people spend on any particular page, Google tracks that, and Google weights pages that people actually spend time on a lot higher than the ones they don't. So that's another advantage SEO-wise of video that people don't tend to think about. And on the consumer side, they said that 95% of people have watched an explainer video to learn more about a product or service. 81% have been convinced to buy after watching a video. And 85% of people said they actually want more video from brands this year. And think about how much video there already is in all of these places. They want more video from brands this year. So it's really, really powerful through the surveys that have been done. The big one from this particular survey was that when both video and text are available on the same page, 72% of people said they'd rather use the video than read the text. So having both options is really powerful, both from an SEO point of view and from a usability point of view. But if you're only going to have one, 3/4 of people want to watch the video. So it's really, really powerful. One great example of this is something I'm sure you've all seen. You just go to Kickstarter to see how video has been pushed to the very, very forefront of the way people market things these days. When you go to a Kickstarter page on a computer, this is what you get. Front and center, name of by the way, this is not a campaign I know anything about. It's just something I pulled off of the Kickstarter homepage. So I don't endorse this monkey thing, whatever it is. But you see the cost, what it's raised, and you see the video. That's it. when you first arrive. But if you want to see even more importantly how video can be up at the forefront, go there on a mobile device. When you open up your phone, go to Kickstarter.com, all you see is that video at the top, same information, and then underneath that, I've been involved in a few Kickstarter campaigns. People spend months trying to perfect this description and images and text and everything else to explain the Kickstarter. When you scroll down on a mobile phone, all you get is what you can buy. You see the video and what you can buy. That's it. You have to go back up to the top. You have to find this link that says read more about this campaign and go in there to actually read the details. Kickstarter prioritizes only the video and the buy buttons. That's it. You have to go and seek out what people would normally think of as all the campaign material. So that's how important they consider video to be, and they're obviously quite expert in getting people to part with their money when it comes to whatever particular topic it is. And by the way, this is an example of how you can do it with a mobile device. You know, we've got this, I'm controlling it with the clicker here. I can say, all right, I'm ready to have this touched, I'm ready to have this scrolled, and it looks really nice. It looks better than it would if you did one of these overhead projector things, but it's totally controlled. I don't have to worry about whether this campaign is offline, whether it's finished. This information is always there whenever I want by creating a video to put in the presentation instead of a live demo. So I just want to finish up with a couple of case studies based on things that we've done and what our clients have seen from video, and then I'm happy to take questions or talk to you as much as you want at the end. But the first one is actually that example that I put up, RedNote. So they had us create this video, which was a pitch to try to get buy-in both from investors and from the music industry to allow people to embed, basically to embed music clips in text messages. They wanted people to be able to send clips from their favorite songs back and forth as texts. And you can imagine licensing terms like for this kind of thing would be horrendous, but they were able to use this video to get buy-in, build their actual app, which ended up being called GIF-Note instead of RedNote, and it actually combines GIFs with music to make these little kind of audiovisual memes that you can now put out. It's an iMessage app. It's available in some places. And they were able to get funding, get buy-in, and get all the pieces they needed to build this because they had this video to explain how it would work. The app didn't work yet. It really, there were very few pieces that were functional. We were able to make a video about how it would work, and they were able to get, I'm not sure how much funding, but plenty of funding to build it and distribute it. Again, this quote, just because I like it. As far as our business has come, that video is still the best thing we did. It was the best investment we made. That's from the CEO of that particular example. Next is one of the big robot vacuum cleaner companies in the US. I know that Neato isn't that popular in Australia. They're the biggest competitor to Roomba. The robots are actually a little bit better. I don't know why. They only sell the old kind of bad ones here. They don't sell the good, newer ones. But we made a series of videos for Neato about basically how to set up the robot, how to use the robot, combination of marketing and a replacement for the instruction manual that came in the box. And they were so happy with that, they came back the next year and said, we need 35 more videos for the new models of the robot because we're going to just ditch the instruction manual entirely, and now you get one page in the box. Here's how to plug it in, get it charged up, go to this website, and watch all the videos. Because people weren't using the text, and people were really interested and excited about those. Even video about how to change the battery, they want us to watch that instead of opening up a book and reading about it. So that was a big win for them. And then this is the example that I gave before about one of our clients that was actually told directly by Apple and Google that if they were able to put a video in their App Store listing, they would get featured. And if they didn't have a video in their App Store listing, they wouldn't get featured. This is the UN World Food Program. Actually, jump back here. The UN World Food Program's app, Share the Meal, from a couple years ago. It's totally altruistic. It's something that would get featured. You literally just push a button to give $1 to hungry kids in Africa. So it's something that Apple and Google wanted to feature, but they refused to unless a video was in there. Once the video ended up in the App Store listing, this is what happened. They were at the top center spot on the Apple App Store in US for 3 weeks straight because they had everything they wanted in the App Store listing. And now, especially on iOS, when you're scrolling through the App Store, the videos autoplay kind of like in your Facebook feed. So if you're scrolling through, the listings that draw your eye are the ones that have app previews. If they don't have an app preview, it just kind of moves along. But if it has an app preview, it's alive and there and saying, watch me. So app previews are really, really important for the iOS App Store in particular. Google has had them for longer, but they don't draw your eye quite as much. You have to go in and find them and hit play, and you do it a little bit more traditionally. So finally, just a few best practices. People always ask these questions. So before you ask your questions, I figure I'll answer a few that you'll probably already ask. First, people always want to know, how long should my video be? And that can be a wide variety of answers. If I were to give you just a total rule of thumb, not knowing what kind of video you were going to make and for what purpose, I would say keep it between 30 seconds and a minute and a half. Now, you can break that rule, but don't make long videos. Very few of you, I'm sure, want to watch a video that says 12 minutes in the corner when you go on YouTube, unless you know that it's a video, like maybe you'll watch a TED Talk, although they edit those down to less than 10 minutes usually. Maybe you'll watch some very famous YouTubers' content that's longer than that. But if you don't know the source of this stuff, you want to watch something that's fairly short. Most people are willing to devote a minute to learn about something. They're not willing to devote 8 minutes unless they already kind of know what they're getting into. So if you're going to make a video for a landing page for your website, I would say keep that video in the kind of 45 seconds to a minute and a half range. It can be a little bit longer. People have chosen to come to your website. They know that they're here to learn about something, so they're willing to give it the higher end of that small range at the top. If you're putting your video on the App Store, when it comes to Apple, they have a very strict rule. It cannot be shorter than 15 seconds or longer than 30 seconds. So app previews have to be between 15 and 30 seconds. Google Play has a much broader range. You can actually put a really long video on Google Play. I don't recommend that. I would say keep it in this rough range, but it could be a bit longer. It could be 45, 50 seconds. But App Store, app previews, 15 to 30 seconds. You now can have 3. You definitely should have 1. You don't need 3 unless you have apps that really warrant extra video content. 1, pretty essential these days. For customer support videos and training, tutorial, informational videos, those vary. Some of them would be very short, just answering a simple question like, how do I reset this? Some of them would be going through and saying, here's how to set up a new account and get all the details into a calendar. That might be a little bit longer. But generally, take a long video and divide it into shorter pieces. People would rather not have to search through an 8-minute video to find the part that they're learning about. They'd rather find 6 30-second videos that answer their questions, click, 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 than they would watch one long video that goes over everything, even if it's the exact same content. For ad content, definitely keep them short, between 10 and 30 seconds. People don't want to watch an ad kind of at all, right? But if they're going to watch an ad, they want to watch an ad that's short. So keep it in that 10 to 30 second range. When you're talking about investor pitches, if you're using it like I did to incorporate either those Google searches or just touching and scrolling through the Kickstarter video website, they can be short, 10 seconds, they can be 5 seconds, they can be pieced together into strings that you can control with a remote. Longer, maybe up to a minute and a half if you're sending it out to investors, but don't put a minute and a half long video in your pitch deck. Investors are there as much to invest in you, the person, as in your concept, and they want to hear you. So if you want to do a long video, make that extra content, not something that's in the pitch, because you're taking them, if you only get 5 minutes to pitch and you're taking half of that, or almost half of that with a video, that really doesn't reflect well on your ability as a founder to communicate. And then if you're doing a webinar replacement video, that's different. People are willing to sit down and watch a webinar. Sometimes they're being forced or paid to watch a webinar, so something in the 5 minutes to 30 minutes range is fine. But if it's going to be long, cut it up into pieces. We had that HPE video that I think was originally a 45-minute webinar, and we turned it into 7 segments, because then people could learn about each segment. They could go back and watch something again. They don't have to, again, scan through the entire thing to find the particular parts of the video that they're interested in. Okay, so key takeaways, hopefully, from the talk, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. First, video is for more than just ads. People think of videos as ads and marketing. Video can certainly be for SEO. It can be for customer support. It can be more for PR than ads in some cases. Lots of uses for video out there. Hopefully some new ones that you hadn't thought of. The web is moving toward a video-first experience. Just look at Kickstarter for a concrete example of that, and plenty of other places. You go to websites these days, so many of them start with a video and then go on from there. So it's really moving to video first. All of these systems now, you open up LinkedIn on your phone, even if you're on a mobile data connection, it starts auto-playing videos in your LinkedIn feed. It's doing this everywhere, so video first. So you have to have video in order to take advantage of a video-first experience. And video is no longer optional when it comes to being an app developer, especially in the app stores themselves. If you have an iOS app, you really, really should have an app preview. It makes a huge difference in discoverability, in the likelihood to get featured, and just in the user experience of people scrolling through and looking for your app. On Google Play, it's also very important because Google really loves video. YouTube is essential to Google's success, and these things are all powerful places to embed video and take advantage of video. And if you don't have a video, you might suffer from somebody else making a video of your product. So that's what I wanted to talk about, but I'm happy to answer any questions and talk to anybody afterwards, and also happy to offer a discount. So if you're here tonight, or anybody who comes in the next. We'll do this till the end of the end of this fiscal year. So we'll do $300 off a video if you use CocoaHeads 2019, or just tell us you were here. If you contact us, you don't have to remember that particular code, but definitely happy to give you a discount. If you want to get in touch with me, I am adam@appdemovideos.com. Sorry, I think I just took the code away as you were taking a picture, but it's down there at the bottom. I am adam@appdemovideos.com. The website is obviously appdemovideos.com. There are phone numbers and contacts for me. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer some now and more later.
One quick one. It sounds like your company prioritizes on app demos. That's your specialty. So what differentiates a demo of an app versus a demo of like a website or even a physical product?
We make all sorts. We got started really doing mobile apps, and that's kind of where the name came from. We've talked about changing the name sometimes, but people get what we do from the name. So it is primarily mobile apps. I think that the biggest difference when it comes to our process of making a mobile app video versus any other app video is that mobile app videos can be quite a bit harder because you need to make it look really good. You need to have the device, have a hand touching it, have this experience that feels like actually using the app. A website or desktop software, you can get away with a screencast kind of thing a lot more because that's what people are used to seeing anyway, but you're not used to seeing your phone just kind of come alive by itself and do stuff. It's hard to follow actions on a phone without seeing somebody follow them. Even if you use those touch point circles, which we do sometimes, those touch points are not as easy to comprehend as an actual hand touching, swiping, doing those things. And getting that to look real and look right, even if it is filmed real, is hard. So that's the biggest technical issue. The other big difference between making mobile app videos and making other types of videos is having to deal with the app stores. Because most clients want a video to go in the app store in addition to a video on their website. Unfortunately for Apple, that has to be a different video because Apple, the App Store videos have to be just a screen recording. You can use touch points, but you can't show the phone. You can't show a hand. You can't show all sorts of stuff that we want to show that makes it easier. And that video looks bad on a website. So we have to make a separate video for that App Store listing. Google Play, not as much, but even still make it a little bit shorter. And then on top of that, technically, now there are 3, 4, 5 actually different iPhone screen shapes, although you don't have to make 5 different videos. You can get away with making 2. And having to deal with that and all those things that come up with different phones, different screens, different aspects. But fundamentally, we're telling the same story. This is a piece of software or a piece of hardware that should have a compelling reason that you want to try it, and we're trying to show off that compelling reason so someone will actually either click buy, click download, or go and try it out.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. G'day, Adam. So we make a product which is a desktop app, and we've done some videos, screencast kind of videos, short little ones, for some of its key support items. The challenge we have is that if we change our product too much, those videos are now out of date.
Yes.
And may not apply anymore, or be, so whereas if we just wrote documentation about how to use our product, of course we can just edit that text. Editing the videos, keeping them up to date, all that sort of stuff, is kind of a cost barrier often if you're paying someone professionally to do this stuff. Sort of what would your advice be, besides use our product, be to controlling the cost and making sure that if you're modifying your application often, you don't have to keep on spending lots of money making it.
That's one of the biggest questions that we get because, okay, I've got version 1, I need a video version 1. What happens when 1.5 or 2 comes out? And even if I've just reskinned the app, so it fundamentally works the same but looks different, you don't want to show the old version. So that is something that we encounter a lot. Our production process is based on a system that allows us to update some of those pieces without having to go through and make the entire video from scratch again. So especially if it's been reskinned. That example I showed of the Kickstarter, that's all real footage pieced together, but it's actually layers that we can edit the various layers, so the screen layer is independent. You can actually take that screen layer out, put a new screen layer in with new information, and if you've just changed the look, mostly, big sections of the video work the same. Other sections may need to be updated to explain a new feature or to fit something in, but that is something that we are aware of and definitely tackle when we make videos. But I know you said, besides, use us. And the big thing that I would recommend there is make sure that you control the environment that you record the videos in so that it's exactly the same every time. If you're using, say, like desktop screen recording software to record a website, make sure that the dimensions of that web browser window are exactly the same all the time. There's some tools online that'll show you your web browser dimensions, and even developer tools can do that. But make sure that you set it to exactly the same dimensions every time so that then if you need to replace 20 seconds of the video, nothing jumps, nothing looks different, nothing's a little bit different. Make sure you use the same version of the same web browser with the same skin each time, and allows you to swap out chunks. Also, if you're going to go with a voiceover artist to record the actual narration, which I would recommend because sound is incredibly important, having really good sound can make the difference in someone's perception of the quality of a video much more than having excellent versus just decent video. So having sound that's good, I mean, voiceovers can be kind of expensive, but not that much. I mean, even, not that I recommend necessarily just going to Fiverr to get a voiceover, but you can pay somebody a couple $100 on a variety of websites to make a voiceover, and then even less to update pieces of it. So just make sure you have somebody that's not, oh, we're gonna have our intern do the voiceover, and then a year later, the intern doesn't work here anymore, so we need to have somebody else do the voiceover. So just make sure that you've built things so that they're very consistent, so when you go back to do them, you only have to redo the pieces that you're changing. So I'd say that's one of the biggest pieces that we use when we're going to make sure that the videos are updatable in the future, is just try to control things as much as you possibly can, so that when it comes time to do it again, you can just go back to all those settings, go back to all those things, and just swap out the pieces that are required.
Just an idea, you give us a $300 discount. Right. What's the rough cost of want to do an App Store video? What would be the rough cost? I know there's 1,000 variables, but...
It depends on a number of different factors, as you guessed. I would say that the easiest thing to tell you is that a video that is for this kind of landing page thing, that would be the minute to minute and a half video, we generally charge around 3,000 to 3,500 Australian dollars for that. That includes the script, it includes all of the music, it includes all the planning. We work with you for that. So it's actually pretty affordable when it comes to, like, even some people who are an indie developer bootstrapping can afford to do that when they're done with the product. It's not cheap, we know that, but a lot of places charge $10, $15, $20, $50,000 for these things. We charge a few $1,000s. The App Store videos don't end up costing a lot less these days because we actually need to make 3 or more of them in order to fill out your App Store listing. You need a video that's properly shaped for the iPhone SE, iPhone 8, and iPhone 8 Plus size, which you can get away with making one video for, but the square-cornered iPhone is one video, and then you need to make another video for the rounded corner iPhones, the 10S and the 10R. So even if it's the same story and the same pieces, we need to actually record and edit the video twice. So it can be a little bit less expensive to do those videos. It can be substantially less expensive to redo those videos because, again, everything is controlled in that situation. You really are just saying, okay, we're using Apple's tools to record this because you have to, or they'll reject it. So yeah, like everybody has to deal with rejections in the App Store if you do one little thing wrong. We've never actually had a video rejected, by the way. We make sure that we follow the rules. But that, I would say that you could look at that same few $1,000 price to do a full set of app previews, even somewhat including an iPad version if you want, as long as it's the same story. If you wanted just one app preview video, we could do it for less, but we don't really recommend that because you have to, like, if you have an iPhone app that works on the iPhone 10, then they show you the iPhone 10 app preview. They don't show you the iPhone 8 app preview if you go on an iPhone 10, and they don't show you the iPhone 10 app preview if you go on an iPhone 8. You just don't get an app preview, and you're missing one of your screenshots, which is a big detriment. So unfortunately, it means making multiple videos. So they are less expensive each, but you have to make several of them. So roughly a few thousand. Some of the videos we make, shorter videos for putting in investor pitches, those can be less expensive. Big complicated videos with actors and locations cost more, but most of the videos we make are in that few thousand, give or take, probably somewhere between 2,500 and like 4,500, mostly around 3 to 3,500. So you're getting about 10% off, basically, to be transparent.
Any other questions? Oh, good. Thanks, Adam.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 10 minutes break and install Rob for the next presentation. Make sure to grab a drink and come back in 10 minutes.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
All right, folks. Rob is going to start his presentation.
Thanks, guys. Grab a seat. Thanks for hanging around. It's good to see there's still a few people here, even though we're now across 8 o'clock. Hey? Yes, thank you. I'm also grateful that Baz has left already. Didn't want to stand between a Liverpool supporter and the pub tonight, so. So my name's Rob. You may remember me from such presentations as Introduction to Command Line Swift, which I gave today, this time last year, from about 8 o'clock. I don't know how that works, thanks to Wednesdays. I'll try not to do a Matt Delves tonight though, and I won't go for 40 minutes, I promise. One thing I will be touching on tonight is the Swift Package Manager. I'm not going into detail this time though. If you're interested in Swift Package Manager, check out the presentation from last year on the YouTube channel. Also relevant is the introduction to Swift on the server that Jet gave April last year. A lot of the concepts are the same, so check that one out too. Before we dive into this, it's useful to put my architect/business hat on just for one slide and say, is this the right tool for the right job? And the answer is definitely no. We're talking about Swift on the back end. There are a lot of more mature implementations of this like Python and Ruby and other things. But you know what? JavaScript has been encroaching on our space for the last few years. Let's take back a little bit and just do it. I love coding in Swift. This is what we want to do. So the actual presentation of this talk is Swift on AWS Lambda. Is everybody familiar with Amazon Lambda? A few people? I'll give a rough overview first then. So what is actually serverless? It doesn't mean there's no servers, it just means that it's somebody else's problem. Way back in the day when I began coding, you wrote your code and then you had this entire stack of things that had to be managed. Hopefully if you're in an organization you could hire somebody to do all the bits in red for you, but somebody still had to do it. You'd get your server, you'd put it in a data center, or more likely under somebody's desk. You'd have to manage the operating system, install patches, security holes, language runtimes, whatever language you were coding in probably had a runtime, .NET for example. Then about 20 years or so, along came virtual servers. And they took away a lot of the work involved in managing the hardware mostly. You could now be presented with a virtual machine, or in Amazon speak, an EC2 instance. And all you then had to manage was the operating system and everything above. You didn't have to care about the hardware anymore. And then we containerized, and this is still a very controversial space. Some people love containers, some people hate containers, but the basis of it is that you package your code and any dependencies that it has, and then it can run anywhere that you can run Docker or Kubernetes if that's your flavor of containers. But now with serverless, we can focus. The job is that we hand over our package of code, just your function, just your library of code. You hand it over to a cloud provider, and they take care of running it. They make sure that there's capacity there to run it at whatever scale you like. They provision the hardware, they make patches. The containers that they manage live for seconds, so you never have to worry about security patches, because the next time your code runs, it's in an up-to-date container. So this sounds very user-friendly. You upload your code to a website, and then how do you actually use it? Well, you could run it from the website. There's a test button where you can pass in some input, and it will throw out some output. Or if you're in Amazon land, and for some context, I run the AWS user group here from this spot once a month as well. So this is very focused on AWS. But it's very, very heavily integrated into the AWS ecosystem. So you can sit it behind an API gateway and run Swift code in response to HTTP requests, or Alexa voice commands, or log processing, or event processing, or queue processing, file uploads, almost anything. But the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to do is that Lambda handles the integration with all of those services. They will install and run your code, and all you get given is a JSON payload. And all you have to return is another JSON payload. Everything in between is up to your Swift code. Or as we know it in Swift land, it's a function that takes decodable, returns encodable. So to use Lambda, that's more or less what it boils down to. So the reason that I've been wanting to do this talk since the start of the year, and the reason for that is Amazon introduced layers that you could add to your Lambda functions, which is basically just a zip file with some pre-compiled binaries. But it meant for the first time that you could use custom runtimes. You weren't limited to their predefined list of Python and .NET and Ruby and all of JavaScript, all of those things. About that time, say 10 people on one of the Swift user groups or mailing lists attempted to port Swift to Lambda. Tony Suter is probably one that's got the best implementation, and that's what we'll be talking about tonight. There will be a link. I've actually written just a quick README markdown file that has the summary of tonight's presentation. There will be a link at the end, so you don't need to note anything down. But beware, we're going cross-platform now. So there's no Objective-C here anymore, so there's no Objective-C compatibility you have to worry about. But at the same time, a lot of your favorite data types in Foundation might not be what you expect them to be. The other caveat to this is that Xcode can't build Linux binaries. So to get around that, we need to use Docker. So we're going on to the demo, because it's literally just a intro slides and some demo. Prerequisites, we need to install Docker, and we need to install the Amazon command line tools. The latter is purely so we can manage uploads and stuff without having to use the website. So, let's go. And fingers crossed that this all works for me. Can everybody read that? Is that big enough? Do I need to make the... Are there more old men at the back of the room that need bigger? We'll wait, no problem. So if I did my job correctly, no I did not. Projects, CocoaHeads, cool. You know what I didn't do? Didn't start that. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Caught up. So Swift Package Manager. We'll just create a basic executable. Again, I go into a lot more detail on this on the talk from last year if you're interested in that. Because we like working with Xcode for some reason, let's create an Xcode project. And then if we open that Xcode project, we get, cool. So it's created the basic template. And my demo for tonight is going to very much rip off Apple's provided demo in the Swift source code Swift website, which is just to return, it's a function that returns a deck of cards basically shuffled. The other thing I didn't start was that. Doing well. Right. There we go. So we need to depend on the AWS Lambda Swift library that Tony Suter has put together. And for demo purposes, I'm just going to import the deck of playing cards example. And then what we do is we let it install as dependencies. Then we regenerate the package. And now if we go to main.swift, that should build. Cool. So, as I mentioned, we need to take two types. One is a request type, which is just something decodable. The other is the return type, which is encodable. I'm just going to, normally you would structure your Swift package with one file per type and blah, 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 keep it nice and clean. For the sake of a demo, I'm just going to throw everything in main.swift. Don't do this at home. Nope, wrong paste buffer. Nope, wrong paste buffer. Cool, so we need to import the AWS Lambda Swift library because we're going to use it later. Usual foundation, or not as you know it foundation. Deck of playing card libraries, we define our request incoming decodable type and the outgoing encodable type. So literally our function is going to be, it takes a JSON payload coming in with an optional number of cards and returns those, a string describing those cards in an array. So build success. So this is our actual function. It's very basic. It just uses the deck of playing cards library, pulls out a deck, shuffles that deck, returns the top, whatever number of cards that you've provided, and then returns that response so that Lambda can encode it and send it off to whoever called it. They do take, there's a couple of models, a couple of different closure signatures that they support here. One is the synchronous returns a result. The other one is it can call a completion handler when you're done. Now this is the magic bit. The runtime type is provided by the AWS Lambda Swift library that Tony Suter wrote. We need to register that Lambda. When you actually go to create the Lambda on the Amazon website, you provide a path to where in that code that you need to execute. So if you wanted to provide a package that had 3 or 4 different functions and 3 or 4 different entry points, we're basically registering an entry point. We're going to call this entry point shuffled, and then it's going to use the closure for that function that we've just defined. So with any luck, we're doing well. Now I mentioned before that we can't build Linux binaries with Xcode. So fortunately, Apple provides official Swift Docker images for Swift 5, so they run on Linux, so you can run it straight away. And for us, that means makefiles. Makefiles are the unsung hero of classic development. But you provide a list of commands here, and then you can see that we're using Docker to running Docker. We're going to call it map the current directory into the /source directory on the Docker container using the Swift Docker image, which is our official 5.0.1 Swift Docker image, and then we'll build. So we can actually see that if I've done this right. So that's going to call into the Docker image. It uses Ubuntu and then the official Swift image. And now you can see that it's actually building it's calling Swift build inside that container. So it has produced Linux binary. So if we try to run that now, Xcode, macOS won't know what to do with it. And the other thing that we've had in that list as well is that in order to send it to Lambda, we just need to zip it up. So the last command there, the package command, just zips up the binary that we build. Cool.
Oh yeah, I missed a slide. So now that we have a package, we need to deploy it somewhere. I'm gonna zoom that one. No, not gonna zoom that one. Zoom too much. Okay. So we need to create a function. So this is in the Sydney region for AWS. Create a function. We'll call that function cards because that's what we're working on. And the important thing is that we select a custom runtime. So you can see the happy children that are actually supported. Unfortunately for us, we're not. We'll go with the default permissions. We don't need to change any of that. Where have I gone too far? So that'll take a few seconds. Cool, that's created our Lambda function. So we now need to go in and set the handler, which is this one here. And so this is the path, the entry path into the binary that you've just built. The binary name is cards, so we call it cards. And then the handler that we set was shuffled. Actually, what I should have done is, yep. And then the other thing we need to do is go into the layers. And so this is all new from November last year. We add in a layer, and we say we want to provide a layer ARN. And here is one that I prepared earlier. So the link to the guide has Swift packages available for every region that you need. Add that in, click save, and that's it. So we have an empty Swift Lambda function ready to go. We just need to upload our code into it. So let's go back to our makefile and add in a deploy command. So the deploy command uses the Lambda CLI client, updates the function code with the name and then the zip file that we create in the package step. Why are my slides out of sync? That's not good. So let's let that rerun. And some build music, I should have thought of that. So that we can't build, with other languages you can just paste your Swift code straight into the website. We can't do that here because they have a 200 meg limit and the Swift compiler is bigger than 200 meg, unfortunately. So that's successful. It's uploaded a new version of the Swift code that we compiled. So now, if we go back over here and we reload this, you should see that our function code is now, so the folder that they can see just has one single cards binary in it, which means we were successful. So to run it, we can go up to the test button here. You need to create some test payloads. So let's, whoops. Oh good, I didn't test this zoomed in. How about now? Nope. There we go, okay. So we can see that we can paste in the example payload that we want to send to the Swift binary. And then if we're lucky, we can hit that test button and it should say test succeeded. Woohoo, demo worked. So that's it. It's literally just taken the input, transformed it, returned the result. It took 301 milliseconds to run, and that's a cold start, so you get billed for 700 minimum, which is about 0.00001 cents that we just got billed for that. If I run it again, there you go, 77 milliseconds. So it's pretty responsive. That's running out of a data center in Sydney. And the main benefit of serverless over the traditional way is that you're not paying for idle CPU time. The exact length that your function runs is exactly what you build, nothing more, nothing less. well, rounded to the nearest 100 milliseconds. And the final thing is that you can also run that from the command line, which is this one, or any of the other integration methods that were mentioned. So that's it for the demo. There is a couple of caveats. Nope. It's still very much a work in progress. There's basically no error handling with the library that we're using so far. It needs a bit of work. But as I said, it's not ready for production. But the key takeaway is there's no AWS framework for Swift, because the one they provide for iOS is written in Objective-C, which has zero chance of working here. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And that's it. The link at the top has a guide which just summarizes everything that I've just said. I'm happy to take any questions. Jet's got the thing. Yes. Yes, there is. Yes, they could. Thanks for putting your hand up, Oliver.
The shuffle function took two parameters. One was a request that you defined, and another one was a context. Can you show me what the context contains? Absolutely.
So this is all the rest of the information that's passed to your function. Yep. Yeah, this is very much static. The environment variables you can actually pass in down the bottom here. Down the bottom. So you can pass in any environment variables down here. But otherwise, the key one to know there is the AWS request ID, which is global for every AWS service you touch in case you're doing tracing. More? Yeah?
Did you know if it was possible to get like a framework like Vapor running on serverless?
You probably wouldn't, because that defeats the purpose of having serverless there in the first place. You'd be more likely to stick Vapor in front of Lambda. But more generally, any Swift library you can import to this and run.
So on a scale from showing off on your blog to mission critical deployment for a massive enterprise that's going to sue you out of oblivion, how far along the scale would you use this as a...
Can you put a number on the upper limit for me?
A couple of 100 million.
A couple of 100 million? 5. No, look, in all seriousness, Lambda's in production. It already handles mission-critical workloads. Swift is obviously in production handling mission-critical workloads. The only thing that's still brand new is this layer package, which if the community steps in and actually helps contribute, we can probably get there within 6 to 12 months, unless Apple or AWS does it for us. I'd say the key crossover is after it's been available for 12 months and supported by the community, or either of the two providers provide an official library.
It's kind of continuing from that. Like, do you think there are any features of Swift that would make it worthwhile to use it with serverless? Or alternatively, do you feel like there are other features of other languages that make it more worthwhile to use them rather than Swift?
You can go either way. In the beginning, Lambda was more of a aimed at scripting languages. These days, with the packaging and development tools, you can stick this on the end of a build pipeline very easily. You can then version control your way through it. It's, as far as what Swift brings to the table, it's the same as what Swift brings to the table for iOS over Objective-C. You've got the strongly typed, proper message dispatch, like optionals, things like that. A lot of scripting languages don't have. Like, you can't actually run Kotlin on this, for example. You can still run Java, but it's the same bridge from any of the traditional languages into a modern language and the benefits that you get. Yep.
Yes, which we get away with by pre-compiling.
Yeah, so I mean, often you'll find people use Go as
Yep.
in Lambda because it's statically compiled to tear a startup time.
Yep.
You see the same advantage with Swift, right? Like,
With this, yes. So cold startup for a Swift instance, Amazon keeps thousands of instances and servers running for Lambda. All it is a managed container. They then deploy your code and all of your layers into that container. So the startup time is literally how fast can it build the container. So it usually keeps all of its assets on S3. How fast can it download your layer from S3? How fast can it download your code from S3 into the container and then spin it up? So
from a container startup time, but
yes,
the app itself.
that comes down to if it's pre-compiled binary or not.
Cool. That's awesome, and also really loud. My question would be just around how usable this is in the near future. It seems to me like the community-driven part, which is the glue, is not huge. Like it's basically going to be something that provides the entry points to the Lambda. So it's
Yep.
it's not a hugely complex thing. So what are the real risks and why is it only a 5?
I addressed this at the start. It's because it's still brand new. There's no error handling. It's a work in progress. You throw an exception in that code right now, and it's just going to die. Like I said, there's no error handling. You'd want better integrations with the other APIs. So we might provide a decodable input and output, but each of the services that are on this screen has a known and well-documented format. So you want support for those as well. We like strongly typed stuff here. Look, there's nothing stopping you from doing it right now, barring any edge cases that, like the AWS Swift library is open source. Where did I put it? This one. Fully open source, you can go and fork it, build your own layer and go from there. Like the layers that I've provided links to is literally I've cloned the library, run make deploy. That's about it. But you can dive right into it. So if we have a look. Yeah. Full source code's there. You can dive straight in, have a look at what you're after. Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, so like the serverless framework as it applies to Node.js is kind of agnostic between AWS Lambda, Azure Functions, that thing DigitalOcean provides that I forget the name of. How much do you reckon it would take to get from an AWS-centric Swift Lambda implementation to something closer to like serverless.js where it's kind of platform agnostic with Azure Functions, for instance?
Well, they've taken about 4 years to get to where they are. So if you start tomorrow, maybe 18 months. But the problem with platform agnostic is that as far as I'm aware, other providers don't support custom runtimes at this time.
Any other questions? I have one for you. Is the Apple, the Swift server group, any interested in any of that? Because they have people from Vapor, from Kitura, IBM, and Perfect. Is there anyone that is like within this server group or even at Apple saying, oh yeah, that's something we could be interested in, or is purely community driven so far?
Purely community that I find. Surprisingly, the Venn diagram between AWS entrepreneur and iOS developer is surprisingly small overlap. Possibly I'm the only one in Melbourne that attends both meetups. No, there's actually one other person, so two. Two of us in Melbourne that attend both meetups. I don't know if they have had discussions about this or not. In my searching with Google, I've come across 3 different forum threads, all on the Swift forums, and that's the basis of this. I found that because I was trying to do this myself, but somebody already got there, so yay. Anything else?
No more questions?
Cool. Thanks guys.
Bro.
Jesse has gone home, so... Oh, that's the wrong PDF. It's in my downloads folder. Here we go. Where are we up to? This is going to take a while, isn't it? Oh, here we go. All right, so thanks for coming, everybody. Next hack night is next week, Wednesday, same time next week, down the road, corner of Flinders Lane, and William Street, just down there. We run this in conjunction with GDG. It's usually a really good night. You can RSVP on the website. Next drinks night is the end of the month, May 28. Are we still doing it at the no longer Harry Potter venue? Possibly.
We'll look at the weather forecast and we might be going back to a oval.
In the basement again, Melbourne winter. Yeah. Check meetup.com. It'll have the updated venue on there as well. The next meetup is June 13th, which I believe is post Dub Dub. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you forget Dub Dub when you're not going. So same back here again, back on the Thursday night though. That's it. Thanks for coming, everyone. If on your way out you could have a look at your feet, grab any beer bottles and pop them in the bin over there. I don't know if we still have any drinks left. Yep, so feel free to help yourself to some drinks and or some takeaways. Just don't let the cops see you with them. Thanks for coming. See you next month.